Hello, Candid Mamas, and welcome. You're listening to the Candid Motherhood podcast with Roxy
and Jackie,
where we tell you all about the ins and outs of motherhood.
We share our own life experiences to prepare you for the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes along with parenting.
So grab your coffee,
sit down,
get comfy,
and enjoy today's episode.
Hello, Candid Mamas, and welcome to podcast number 4. This episode is titled Postpartum and Newborns. So you've delivered a baby, and now it's time to take your precious bundle of joy home. But there's a catch. There is no instruction manual. How the hell do I keep this thing alive? How often do I have to feed it? Does it ever stop crying? When will I sleep again? These are all great questions. Well, the good news is God gave us these amazing things called instincts. And it seems that as soon as you bring your baby home, you just have this innate ability to care for it, even with little to no experience. So if you're an expert at parenting, this podcast is not right for you. But if you often ask yourself, am I doing this right? Then you've come to the perfect place. Jackie and I are about to discuss our experiences as first-time mothers. So Jackie, what was your experience like coming home from the hospital with a newborn and postpartum for the first, I would say, 6 weeks to 3 months of life?
Well, I know with my first baby, the postpartum came probably like within a day or two of being home. It didn't happen while I was in the hospital, but it hit me pretty hard. I was very emotional. My emotions were all over the place. I was happy, sad, crying, laughing, just all in a matter of like 5 minutes, it could be. And I know also that I had a hard time transitioning with being a mom because you don't really get the experience unless you're around babies and maybe you have, younger people in your family, but I didn't have that. So I didn't have the experience of being around babies. So when I brought Nate home, it was a big shocker, I guess. And the postpartum really made me feel like I made a mistake. Do I don't know, this, always sounds terrible when I say it, but like, do you want to like snuff the baby out and get rid of it because like you think you made a mistake? So I mean, took a while for me to get over, but I eventually did, and that changed. And like you said, your motherhood instincts just kick in. Did you have a similar experience with postpartum?
With postpartum depression, I did experience it with my first, but not with my other 2 pregnancies. So the feelings that I got that kind of made me realize that that's what I was dealing with were that I just wasn't myself for a long time. And I know that there are a thing called the baby blues that almost every mom will get right after pregnancy. But I think that the depression goes a little bit past the baby blues, and I wasn't really feeling myself for a while. I would probably say even up to a year after I gave birth. I didn't exactly have feelings that I wanted to like kill my baby or anything, but I did have feelings that like when I heard her crying, like I didn't want to respond to her cries, even though I know she needed me. Or like, I would be like, wow, oh my God, like to me, it was like her crying. I couldn't stand it. But my husband did step in a lot, and, he was like trying to help me work through it. And he would always step in whenever I wouldn't. So she was always well taken care of. But I think that was one of the main reasons. Another main point would be that I kind of like felt hostility a little bit towards my husband, because I kind of felt like I've been through this whole traumatic experience and he didn't have to go through any trauma. So I kind of like had a little bit of hostility towards him, and it was nothing that he did at all. It was just my feelings and my emotions, and that's how they were coming out.
He went through the trauma of your anger.
He sure did. And so I feel like it affected our relationship a lot.
Definitely. Kids are going to affect your relationship 1,000,000%. I really feel like the majority of divorces come after kids.
Yes, it did.
They
And
just put
I
a
just
strain
think,
on your relationship, and it's not about you and your partner anymore.
right, it's hard to, your partner has always been your first priority. And now all of a sudden, you're bringing in another life that obviously they have to take the first priority because they're so helpless and they need your attention 24/7. It's very, very hard thing to deal with. I think going from 0 kids to having your first kid is the biggest change rather than adding more kids into the picture after you already have one.
Yeah, and I think that some good advice is really think about if you want a kid or not, because listen, there's no return policy, and that baby is going to be with you for the rest of your life. So, if you want to go to the grocery store, you want to go get your nails done, you can't just leave. You need a babysitter, or you have to take the kid with you. So it's definitely a big change. And, I don't think that kids are any answer to like saving marital problems or things like that. But, really, I really think you should think about whether or not you really want to have kids, because it's a huge change in your entire lifestyle.
Well, I always knew I wanted to have kids. I always knew I wanted to be a mother, but no, nothing can really prepare you for being a mother until you become one, really, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple other things that made me realize I had postpartum was that like I just didn't enjoy the things I used to enjoy before. I kind of like felt like I was always in a slump. I wasn't smiling all that much. I didn't have like that happy, giddy, like,
Yeah.
yay, I just had a baby type of feeling. And I felt like I wasn't bonding with the baby the way I should be or the way I expected to.
Yeah.
But luckily, with my other 2 pregnancies, I didn't have that. So that's, I think when I had my second, that's when I realized like, wow, I think I went through postpartum with my first.
I think I had the same thing, because I really don't think I realized at the time that it was postpartum. I just thought that I was crazy, but when I had my second kid, I didn't have that either. I don't know if it's like, because it's your second kid, your body's like used to the hormone changes and whatever else you're going through. But, with the first kid, it was there, but, I really didn't realize. I just thought I was crazy.
Yeah, it's easy to feel that way. But besides depression, what other postpartum things did you go through? Like what kind of changes did your body go through after pregnancy, after delivering your baby?
Well, I know that with the first one, it was pretty traumatic for me, for my body anyways. I had stitches, I was on this medicine while I was in the hospital, I couldn't really get any rest. And that's another thing too, is, once you have a baby, whether you had a C-section or you had it vaginally, you don't realize how much attention that baby needs. So you need to be healing because you just had a baby, but you really can't. You have to spend your time and attention towards your baby. But I think that the healing process definitely took a good 6 weeks for myself to feel kind of normal again. And then my stomach was very jiggly, and that stayed for longer than 6 weeks. That stayed for a really, really long time. I don't know if it ever came back to normal. Being pregnant for 10 months really takes a toll on your body, and you don't realize how much you're going through. What did you experience?
Well, my stomach never went back to normal either. It's never going to. I don't think after 3 kids. I would probably have to work out for the rest of my life. But some things that like people don't realize that happens to you after you deliver a baby, it's that like once you deliver, it's not just your body just goes right back to normal. Like it needs a lot of time to heal, and you bleed for like at least 3 to 4 weeks after. And
I bled for
sometimes
6
it could
weeks.
be, yeah, sometimes it could be heavy bleeding and sometimes it could be a little lighter, but no matter what, you're bleeding. So you have to deal with that. And
And
on
then you
top
get
of
your
it,
first period afterwards and you're like, really? I just bled for 6 weeks. That wasn't good enough.
yes. And I don't know about you, but for me, like, I remember it was very hard for me to like even laugh or sneeze without peeing myself. That's one of
I
the
still
other
have
big
that
things if you
problem.
deliver. So do I. And I don't think that's ever going to go away, but I heard that if you do Kegels, they really help. So
Yeah,
I
I
guess I'm
try
going to have to
that.
work on that.
That's a mom problem for sure.
Definitely. And then I know it's really embarrassing to talk about, but when you're pushing a baby out, you end up getting hemorrhoids too because of how hard you have to push.
You know, Rob had hemorrhoids and I always made fun of him because like, I was like, oh, you're being a baby, whatever. Then I had them after delivering and I was like, this is no joke. This shit hurts. It's like, now I have stitches. Now I have hemorrhoids. I can't wipe myself. I have to squirt myself with a freaking water bottle. This is on.
Yeah.
But though, and then you got to stick some cream up your butt to give you any sort of relief from these hemorrhoids. It's unreal. I mean, these babies really destroy you.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Okay, so another topic that some women would probably be embarrassed maybe to talk about, but you know, they might want to know the answer is how long after delivering did you have sex again?
That is a good question. You know, doctors' recommendations are 6 weeks. And I'm pretty sure I waited 6 weeks. I like to say, give an analogy of, you know, the first time having sex after giving birth is like throwing a hot dog down the hallway. Everything is just messed up, mushy. It's just don't feel right. It hurts a little, I guess, you know, but just like a well-oiled machine, everything eventually goes back to normal. And you know, when I had my first kid and I was in the hospital, the nurse told me, don't worry, you're going to forget what happened and I'll see you soon. You'll be back. And I sure enough was.
Yeah, they do tell you to wait 6 weeks. I think I waited a little longer than that, but I think also my depression had to do with that. But with my third one, I had a home birth and I remember I was like ready to go at like 4 weeks. But I still waited the 6 weeks.
You know what happened to your body and you know what experience you had. I mean, I guess it's different if you had a C-section because I don't know if you feel any different down there because you really didn't have anything happen. You know, there was no trauma. So, I mean, but having a natural birth, there was a lot of trauma. So, you know, obviously it's going to be weird and painful, but you just gotta, you know, continue pushing on and just it'll get better. It'll be fine, you know?
Yeah.
But if you find time to actually have sex because you were dealing with a newborn, so now your whole lifestyle has been turned upside down because you are up every 2 to 3 hours. I don't know if anybody tells you this or if you know that, you know, when you're about to have a baby, but you know, you may want to have sex, but who has time for that? You have a newborn. We value and appreciate all of our listeners.
We are working hard to provide you with the best quality podcast possible.
If you'd like to help support our efforts, please consider making a donation in any amount.
No amount is too small. Just go to anchor.fm/candid.motherhood and click on support.
Your donations will go towards the purchase of new microphones. Thank you so much, Candid Mamas.
So let's go into maybe breastfeeding with the baby, because I know that even like our boobs, whether we're breastfeeding or not, we still get milk in. So there's still definitely things that are happening internally, whether we decided to breastfeed or not. So how was your experience with that like?
I didn't breastfeed for either child. For some reason, I tried breastfeeding with Nate and he never latched on, and he just like never really made that bond, I guess. And so I bottle fed him pretty quickly. And for some reason, I just like never got any milk. I did, like what you read in the books, they say after you have a baby, wear a tight, really, really tight bra to, condense the pressure, because there's going to be a lot of pressure. It's going to hurt. But I never got that. I never got any pain, never got any milk. I'm not really sure why. So I bottle fed for both kids. I didn't even try with Lacey because I just kind of thought like, well, if Nate didn't want it, then Lacey's probably not going to want it. So I just bottle fed her. But with the bottle feeding, Lacey was different because Nate, he was fine. He took pretty much whatever formula we gave him. But Lacey had a problem with the formula and she just would throw up. She really didn't like it. So we had to give her like a sensitive stomach type of formula. What are your experiences with it? Because I really don't have any clue in that area.
Well, I had struggles and I had successes. So my struggles were that with Julie, we had a latching problem with her. I'm not sure if it was maybe linked to my postpartum, maybe like that bonding time. Maybe that's why I didn't feel it, or maybe, the babies can pick up your energy too. So yeah, maybe it was that, like, but she didn't.
What you eat, what you drink, your energy, they can sense it all.
Yeah, so she didn't like to latch. So, I mean, I tried for a very long time and there was nothing wrong with me or her. I had talked to so many lactation consultants and everyone said the same thing, like, just keep trying, some babies just don't get it. So I did. About after a month, she did finally get the hang of it. But by then, I had tried pumping, but it's not the same as when the baby actually latches on. So by then I had to work twice as hard to get the milk out. So I ended up just giving up after 3 months, and I just ended up keeping her on the formula full time. But I know that even though we were having trouble breastfeeding, that I still got my boobs were like rock hard after I gave birth. Like when they fill up with milk, if you don't pump them, like you'll wake up with your entire front of your shirt all wet, all the bed sheets will be soaking wet. It's like really embarrassing too. If you forget to put in one of those like little breast pad things inside of your bra, then you'll be working and all of a sudden the front of your shirt will be wet. It's so
I never had that. I don't know why that I never got milk.
Well, it's what I learned after with my second and third. With my second, I breastfed for about 5.5, 6 months. And then I ended up weaning him off just because I felt like I needed my personal space back. I know it was probably selfish of me to do that. So with my third, I'm like, no, I'm going to do better. He's almost 2 and I'm still breastfeeding him. So, I mean, it has pros and cons because it's good health benefits and stuff. But then the cons are, the baby can't sleep anywhere without you. I can't even leave him alone overnight with my husband because he will not take a bottle.
Well, you don't realize that, pretty much the first year of their life, you're carrying that baby everywhere. So, you really, your attention is 100% on them. And I know like a lot of like my family members and things like that would say, oh, you need to take time for yourself. It's hard to say that when you have a newborn, though, that really, truly, the only way it can communicate to you is by crying. So you need to give it that 100% attention. And I know the first 3 months of life are pretty critical. You want to get them on a sleep schedule, you want to get them on a food schedule. And until they start eating like solid foods, you know, it could be pretty hectic and pretty erratic with sleep, with eating, and very stressful, and put a strain on yourself and your mental health, your physical health, but also your relationship too.
See, one of the good things about bottle feeding and formula feeding is that I think the baby takes to a schedule very well and very quickly, because the formula keeps them fuller longer, in my opinion.
Yes.
And I think that they love the bottle, but I think that they love the breast even more. And it's so much harder to get them to stop breastfeeding than it is to get them to stop bottle feeding.
Well, yeah,
and
also like get separation anxiety too, because, you know, they're attached to you when you're breastfeeding.
Well, also when you're bottle feeding, like the husband or the grandparents or somebody else can take over the role of feeding the baby every once in a while. Yeah. Whereas when you're breastfeeding, really the mom has to do
share
it,
a boob.
That's where the milk comes from. I mean, not this one at least.
Some people might want to, but that's a little weird.
Well, there are people who breastfeed other people's children, and I'm not opposed to that at all. My sister was pregnant at the same time I was, and I had to go out somewhere, and I was like, please, can you watch him? I was like, if he cries and you need to breastfeed him, I'm not opposed to that. Didn't end up happening, but at the same time, it's like breast milk is breast milk, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know about that though, because like that's your kid, like on another woman's body. I don't know about that. I don't think I'd be all right with that.
Well, in an emergency situation,
definitely in an emergency,
to a hospital or something.
Oh yeah, in an emergency, go for it. You know, you got to feed your kid.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, what a lot of people don't know about my third time around experience breastfeeding is that my baby was literally attached to me for like 4 or 5 months straight. There was like no time that I wasn't carrying him with a boob in his mouth. And I know that's not the same for everybody, because I've known other people who can breastfeed their baby and put them down for a nap, but that was not my child. He needed a nap on me. He needed to sleep on me at all times. If he didn't feel me, if he didn't hear me, my heart beating, then he was not calm. And also that brings me to another big subject, is colic. So if you're lucky enough to have a baby that's not colicky, cherish it, because I had 2 non-colicky babies and my third was so colicky that I used to make jokes, and I used to tell people that he's like baby level expert, because I literally did not sleep for 5 months straight.
And it's because it's your third, right?
Yes. I think if I had him first, I might have waited a lot longer to have kids, like another kid.
Right? That'll give you some good birth control. I mean, I didn't really experience any colic with the kids, other than, you know, Lacey needing different formula. They were pretty good. I tried to get them on a food schedule and a sleep schedule as soon as they were born. The sleep schedule to me was very important, because it got them to the point when they were 3 months that they were sleeping in the crib and they were sleeping through the night. I am not one of those mothers that is okay with the baby sleeping in bed with you. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that causes problems later on when you try to transition them to the crib. I know though that for Nate, you know those swings that are you plug them in the wall, they're like not battery operated.
Yes, I used to have one.
Yeah, best thing ever, saved my life, because you would put the baby in there, and that is literally the only thing that he would sleep in. And I don't care what anyone says, I put him in there and he swung all night in that thing, sleeping like a baby, you know. But the second I put him in the crib, he was hysterical crying. So when I finally transitioned him to the crib, because, you know, eventually they're going to outgrow that thing, I had to sit there, and I don't know if this isn't good or not, but like I had to sit there with the binky and hold it in his mouth until he finally like soothed himself to sleep and got used to the crib.
Yes, I had the exact same experience as you. My kids loved the swing. My daughter took to the bassinet right away. I had them all in bassinets at first, and my daughter and my first son did very well. But this last baby, he would not sleep in a bassinet. He wouldn't sleep in a crib, and most nights he wouldn't even sleep in the swing. But when I could get
baby
him off,
syndrome.
when I could finally get him off of me, he did. The only place he would sleep is in the swing, and I remember I took a video the first time he napped in his swing, and I sent it to Martin with like all hands up emojis because I was so excited that I actually, and Martin was like, congratulations. Like it was a big accomplishment to get him to sleep alone. But
I swear, if I had
like
a third kid, it'd probably be like the devil child and would test every patience that I got. That's why I'm not having any more kids.
Yeah. I think this is going to be it for me too. But I am also not a big fan of co-sleeping either because I do feel like it causes bad habits later on. However, with my third child, he literally changed everything for me because I could not sleep at all unless he was attached to my boob. And I'm not even joking you. So the only way I ever got any sleep was if I was laying down and with a boob in his mouth and he was laying next to me. So he's the only kid that I co-slept with. And I only did it because it was a dire necessity for me to function as a mother with two other children. But luckily, I am a very light sleeper. So any kind of little movement, even as tired as I was, I always woke up.
Yeah, well, I know that once the kids were in the crib, with Nate, we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment until he was about 1 year old. So his crib was in our room, but he was in the crib. But when we moved into our house and we had Lacey, they both had their own bedrooms. So, you know, you have the monitors and everything, but you're literally waking up every 2 to 3 hours to feed or change them. You're just totally exhausted. And I know that at the time, me and Rob were both working full time, you know, after the 3 months. But even during the time that I was off from maternity leave, we would take turns. We would do like an every other day. At first we did, I would do the weekends and he would do the weekdays or vice versa. But that ended up being too much. So it would be one day it was my turn to listen to the monitors at night. The next day it was his turn. And then we would sleep in between. So at least the partner, you guys both were able to sleep and not just be up every 2 to 3 hours taking care of the baby, you know?
Yeah, we try to do that as much as we could. With the first and second, I would definitely say we had some type of system like that. It might not have been exactly every other day, but you know, whenever I was feeling extra exhausted, you know, my husband would take over night duty because because they had bottles. I would just leave the bottles made. All you had to do was warm them up. But, you know, with the third, I think the breastfeeding, like I am very, very grateful that I was able to feed him all throughout his entire life and not have to give him any formula. But at the same time, it takes a lot out of me. It's a lot. It requires so much from me. It's exhausting. I always have somebody touching me. And I kind of like feel like
so
when my husband tries to touch me, I'm like, oh, don't touch me. I just don't want to be touched right now. And I feel so terrible.
Oh no, I totally get that. Sometimes you're just like, can I go hide somewhere? Do I have to go in the closet to be alone? Sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm not a very touchy-feely person to begin with. So to have somebody always touching me and always grabbing on me, it's like over sensory for me. You know what I mean?
You know, and also I don't want everybody to think that like everything that you see on the internet and you see on Instagram is real motherhood, because a lot of these people lie. And I can't stand the women that are just like, oh my God, I love my kids. They're amazing. I'm going to do everything. Like, I feel that way too, but I'm not that mom that's like just head over heels for my kids. I mean, I don't know. I'm just not that person.
I feel that way too, but not 100% of the time, every second of the day. I mean, that's just not reality. Your kids get you upset. there are times where you just have so much stress on you that anything that anybody does or says to you is going to like just piss you off, you know? So
Yeah, and
I
really
do feel that way
like,
everyone.
I feel like, even with talking with the postpartum and everything, those first 3 months, you really, like you said, cannot bond with the kid and not feel a connection. And it's nothing that you did. You're not a bad mother or anything like that, but I just can't stand these women that portray this picture that it's picture perfect and everything is just so amazing. Motherhood is just the most amazing thing. Yeah, it is amazing and it is rewarding, but at the same time, there are a lot of downsides to being a mother, and it's the most underrated, underpaid job that you're ever going to do.
That's right. You're not going to get appreciation for every little thing that you do. You get rewarded in love from your children. And sometimes you don't get love from them because they just want to be like annoying and brats that day, but what can you do? They're your kids. You made them and they're probably took after you anyway. So you can't really get mad at them for that.
That's going to be some more topics that we talk about later on. When we get to our kids being older, because the older they get, the bigger the attitude, the more they lie. And, when we get to the teenage years, I know that my kids are going to give me a run for my money. And we got a lot more sleepless nights than just the newborn stage.
Yep. And I know we talked about doing an episode like 6 going on 16. Mm-hmm. So you can stay tuned for an episode like that, because I feel like kids are growing up way too fast these days. But I don't want you to think that just because you don't bond with your baby immediately that you're never going to bond with it. That's not true. You will find things to bond over with your children, especially as they get older and you find common interests and you do things together as a family. You are definitely going to bond with your children. So don't fear that.
Yeah, like Lacey's 6 years old, and it's funny. I took her to the mall the other day, and it was just me and her. And it was the first time where we actually could go to the mall and just shop. And she was interested, and she was like so excited to see even the people walking around. She was like, look at all these people. And then we went into Claire's and she picked out jewelry and things like that. So there's many stages to having a child. And, you think that newborn stage is the worst, but as they get older, you realize you wish they were babies again because they didn't talk and they didn't walk.
You definitely feel that way, because I have kids ranging from like 1.5 until maybe almost 9 years old. She's gonna be 9 next month, and I definitely do miss that newborn. Like my friend just had a baby yesterday and she sent me pictures, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, like I miss my babies when they were that little, that just like that cute little, all they want to do is eat and sleep type of necessity type of thing. Like, yes, it's exhausting, and yes, it's probably going to be one of the hardest times in your life, but it's the best. Like those baby snuggles, the smells, everything. I love everything about it.
I used to love when they would drink the bottle and they make those noises like, like them gulping down, or just them needing you. The older they get, the less that they need you. And, a lot of times moms that are stay-at-home moms, when their kids leave the house and they're empty nesters, they don't really know what to do with themselves. And, that's another topic in itself too, because that could also cause a divorce, because now you realize that you and your husband have nothing in common after raising kids for 18 plus years, Yeah,
I think it's definitely important to keep your relationship a priority while still trying to balance mom life, because you can't leave it to the back burner, because once your kids leave, then you've only got each other.
Exactly. You definitely need to make time for those date nights. However it works for you, because you're going to have the babysitter, or some people aren't fortunate enough to have family members that are around that are just willing to babysit, so you can go have a date night. I know me and Rob don't have that. We don't really go out that often anyways. But if we did, I guess we could go out if we wanted to. My parents or his mom or whoever could watch the kids. But, you know, a lot of times I feel bad just going out. You know, you say, oh, you want to go out, have a great time because you're an adult and you want to have an adult conversation with your husband. And then half the time I'm out, I'm like, oh, I wish I was home with the kids. It's the weirdest thing. It's like you want to get away. And then when you're away, you want to come back home.
I completely agree with you, but I also don't want to get too far off topic because we could talk about that in maybe another episode that has to do with, you know, keeping the spark alive in your marriage while parenting. But going back to the newborns, I want to ask you, what are your like top newborn necessities? Like if you could only have maybe, let's say 5 things, what would be your top 5 things for a newborn?
Number 1 is the diaper genie, because that thing is amazing. It keeps the smell out. You just throw the little diaper in the little thing and you change. We used to call it like a big snake poop. That's what it looks like when you change the bag, a giant.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I used to have one with Julie, but then I kind of felt like it was just taking up space in my room because we ended up stop using it. And then the replacements were a little pricey. So we were like, man, we don't need this thing anymore.
Yeah.
But it was very useful at the time.
I have to say, the swing, like I talked about before, that was amazing. Trying to think of what else. It's been a while. Oh, the Boppy Pillow. That was a lifesaver for me. That you don't realize how excruciating, I guess, if you will, it is to hold a baby all day long. So the Boppy Pillow, you just place it right on your belly or wherever you are, and you just lay the baby there so you can breastfeed or feed them at the bottle, whatever you need to do. But that definitely was in the top. I needed to have that with both pregnancies. So another product that we couldn't live without was the little binky holder that attached to their onesies. So that way you didn't lose it. That, I mean, the amount of binkies you must lose if you don't have that is amazing. And, you know, you don't want putting it in their mouth if they drop it on the floor somewhere. The other thing is, if you are bottle feeding, depending on the bottles that you have, a lot of them have like a lot of pieces to them and they're hard to clean. So when we were using these Dr. Brown's bottles and they had these really tiny, like straw-like things that went down in the bottle so they could suck the bottle down. We didn't know until like a few months into him using it that like that inside of that straw was not clean. So we ended up getting like these pipe cleaner things. And when we actually cleaned the straw, it was so disgusting to find what was inside of that. So when we had Lacey, we switched bottles. We ended up getting the Tommy Tippy bottles, and they didn't have like any sort of attachment or anything. It was just basically a nipple on a bottle, and it was kind of shaped like a boob too in that shape. But those were better because it was literally top and bottle, and that was it. The Dr. Brown's bottles had like 5 pieces to it.
Oh, I know all about the Dr. Brown's bottles. I used them for Julie and Nikki. And I mean, they were great bottles because they reduced the colic so much. But yes, it was so annoying to clean. And when you have to clean a bottle every 2 hours, or like even if you buy enough to feed them throughout the night, by the time you have to wash them in the morning, you've got like 4 stacked up to wash. And yeah, I actually have this contraption that's like round and layered, and it has like these little sticks that come up so you can actually put all the pieces on it, because after a while, I had that too. Yeah, it just fills up everything. But yeah, you're right. And I know that the bottle does come with one pipe cleaner to clean, but I mean, however, you're washing that bottle so often that, yeah, I used to use the pipe cleaners too. And they do get really nasty, especially if you wait till the morning to wash them or something, you don't wash them right away.
I know another thing too that I didn't realize was, you know, the babies have like the rolls and so much fat when they're a baby in their neck that like, I guess Nate must have like leaned back or something. I was like, oh my God, what is that? And it was like all this gunk and stuff, not realizing that it's the milk that's dripping down his chin. I didn't realize I had to clean in that area. So I was like, oh my God, it's like disgusting, nasty cheese. But so I learned that the hard way, you know.
Yep. Just a clean washcloth will do that. So you mentioned a lot of the ones I would also pick. One of the things I definitely used a lot, especially with my third, was baby carrier. And I used a wrap. And the one I used was the boba or the Moby wrap. I used them both. And that was one of my favorite things because I was able to wear it around the house. It was really super lightweight. And it kept the baby close to me, but it didn't add like a heaviness to him. It was basically just the weight of the baby.
Yeah,
so
I never tried those wraps or the baby carriers. I'm not really sure why I never tried them.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of like finagling to get it positioned right and to get it tied the right way. But once you get the hang of it, it's the easiest thing ever. I used to just pack it into the diaper bag. I didn't even bring the stroller with me when we went out. I would just put him right into the wrap and go into a store. And it's like, I didn't have to worry about bringing the stroller and the cart because that was one of my worries. Like, how am I going to do both? So I would just carry him and push the cart.
I used to stick the car seat carrier in the seat where like the babies sit, and it would just like click right in the shopping cart. It was the greatest thing I ever learned.
Yeah, well, my son, if you had any kid like my kid, he hated the car seat, and as long as he was in it, he was screaming bloody murder. So most of the time I would have to take him out and carry him anyway. So
it's so frustrating.
For me, that was the easiest way to do it. And also I would say pacifiers, and try out a bunch of different pacifiers because my daughter liked a different pacifier than my sons did. So you have to try a couple and see what they like. And Ma'am was the one I used for my sons, and then the Nook ones was the one I used for my daughter.
You know, and now, you know, mothers that are pregnant today in 2021, they have so many like gadgets and gizmos to help make motherhood better. I mean, we didn't have that, you know, 8-9 years ago. It really, I mean, there was some, you know, technologies that were better, like when our parents were having children, but you know, the improvements they've made in things, like you can have the bottle machine that you just stick the bottle under it and it evenly pours out the formula and the water is ready to go. It's nice and warm. The bottle cleaners, you know, just everything is very tech savvy these days, and you have a lot of help from that.
I think that's a good thing and a bad thing though, because I think that a lot of times you can have too many gadgets and really you don't put them to good use. So that's why I'm like, the ones that you really need would be these. A good bottle brush if you're bottle feeding is another one. I know I went through a whole bunch of those. I always kept one on like the back burner just in case my other one decided to like not be good anymore, you know, or get really grungy. So we're going to go over a little bit about baby milestones now. I know that babies go through a whole bunch of milestones within their first 3 months of life. I know when they first come out, they can't hold their head up at all, and their vision is really bad. And I think their hearing is fine, but they kind of still have to get used to voices and stuff and who belongs to. Like, I know they know their mom's voice, but siblings and other people. So what other kind of milestones would you say a baby goes through in the first 3 months?
Oh, well, there's a lot. You know, they have their first smile. They have their the first time they sit up. You know, tummy time is huge when they're, you know, 1 to 3 months, I guess. You know, you want to give them tummy time so they build up the strength to lift their head up, to roll over. You know, and then usually around 3 months is when you start incorporating the rice cereal. So they start having some more solid foods. But besides that, I also think that they go through different stages of crying. there's a crying for, I need my diaper changed, or a crying for, I need food, or I want mommy, just anything like that. You get to know the baby and what he needs and what he wants.
I agree. The different cries, definitely, you start learning them. It takes a little while, but you start learning like that really high pitched scream, like, oh, he's hungry, or like that little fussing, like, oh, maybe he has a dirty diaper, so you start learning. I totally agree. You get the sleepy cry. Yeah, I definitely agree. So I think that we discussed pretty much everything there is to discuss about babies and newborns in the first 3 months of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're going to wrap it up here. Next week is going to be about your toddlers and all about once they start, I would probably say about like 5 months on.
Yeah, and we're just going to continue Candid Mamas, sharing our topics about our motherhood experiences. And we hope that you like us and share and subscribe.
And you can look out for our new downloads every Tuesday and Friday.
Thank you for listening, Candid Mamas. Thank you so much for listening to Candid Motherhood Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please subscribe, share, and rate our podcast.
If you have any ideas for future episodes or want to learn more about us, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at candid.motherhood and on Twitter at @cmotherhood.
We appreciate your love and support. Until next time, thank you, Candid Mamas. Bye.